Myoho-renge Kyo-Tame. Myoho-renge Kyo-Tame. Myoho-renge Kyo.
Hi everyone, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. So, this Gosho is a reply to Hoshina Goro Taro. And as a study aid, I made a short video called Fountain Analogy um, that I think will help you grasp this Gosho more quickly, more profoundly for yourself. And I'll link it at the end of the video. After Emperor Ming of the Han Dynasty dreamed at night of a golden man dispatched emissaries to the western region, the two sages, Kashyapa Matanga and Chu Falan, came to China and stood for the first time at the gates of Chang'an. From that time until the reign of Emperor Sun Chun of the Tang Dynasty, the Buddhist teachings of India spread throughout China. During the Liang Dynasty, Buddhism was first introduced to Japan by King Cheongmyong of the Korean kingdom of Pakche. Sorry. This occurred during the reign of Kimei, the 13th emperor of Japan. Thereafter, all the sutras and treatises were circulated widely, and various Buddhist schools arose throughout Japan. How fortunate it is, then, that even though we were born in the latter day of the law, we were able to hear the teachings preached at Eagle Peak. And even though we live in a remote corner of the world, we are able to scoop up with our hands the water of the great river of Buddhism. So, those last two sentences I want to spend just a moment on. You will hear statements often about the teachings preached at Eagle Peak, or let's see, another word, the ceremony in the sky. All of these are in reference to the actual sutra of the Lotus. The Lotus Sutra is in itself, although there are some preparatory chapters and some introductory chapters and conclusions to it, is mainly a story of a sermon, and that sermon is captured with a lot of fantastical imagery and mental exercises. I've often referred to the mental exercise of Buddhism, or what's the other word I'm looking for? The no matter. Anyway, so when you hear these statements preached at Eagle Peak, don't think that there was a specific place, although there may have been historically, where obviously the man Shakyamuni taught people, and this is a transcription of that sermon in a certain place. When they talk about the preaching at Eagle Peak, or the teaching at Eagle Peak, or the ceremony in the sky, this is a fictitious place that represents the entire teachings of that particular sutra or sermon. Okay, and the great river of Buddhism. Again, I want to remind you, the Lotus Sutra stands atop the entire scholarship of Buddhism, from early Buddhism, which was preparatory and provisional, all the way through several sutras, culminating in the Lotus Sutra, and even a closing sutra, the Nirvana Sutra, after the Lotus Sutra. So all of this is the great river of Buddhism. All right, so Nichiren's always careful to include that the Lotus Sutra alone isn't it. It is it as a culminating teaching, but it stands upon. Okay? Okay, back to Nichiren. A close examination, however, shows that there are distinctions to be made among the Buddhist teachings, which is what I was talking about, such as the Hinayana and the Mahayana, or the provisional and true teachings. It says true here, but in other translations, you'll see that it's essential teachings, uh, they go back and forth depending on who translated what. Or those of the sequence of preaching. So the sequences of the teaching, the sequence of the teachings is important, just as I was explaining. There are earlier teachings, and they provide context for latter teachings until you get to the culminating teachings where it wraps everything up. Okay? The Lotus. If you're confused about these distinctions, you will fall into erroneous views. So it's important to understand them. And even though you may practice Buddhism, your offense will outweigh that of committing the 10 evil acts or the 5 cardinal sins. So this is a really strong admonition that you can't just wander around Buddhism and stop wherever you like and practice that like you're going to get the ultimate goal, because you won't. You're just learning. Again, the analogy of math comes to mind. When you learn when you're a little kid and you learn numbers to begin with, none of it makes sense. And then at some point, numbers become addition and subtraction, and now numbers seem to have a use, and that's arithmetic. And at some point, you'll go beyond arithmetic, hopefully, and you'll learn geometry and trigonometry and algebra. You may stop there. You may never get to calculus. Many don't. You may jump right past calculus and get into chemistry and learn how to use the mathematics and the algebra and so on and so forth, all the way to particle physics, right? So this isn't a video about math, but Buddhism is taught in the same manner. In order to understand the profound concepts that Shakyamuni was trying to teach his students, he realized that he needed to begin at the beginning. He needed to kind of retrace his own steps. So the sequence of teachings is not unlike his own sequence of discovery to his enlightenment. Okay? So if you don't understand that, you're going to wander around and you're going to do a lot of things for nothing. And worse, Nichiren is implying here that not only will you waste your time, but because you're working against your own enlightenment, you're getting in your own way. This is considered, in the words of these translations, a slander. Okay, because you should be enlightened right now. You should know that because it's already there. So anything you do that takes you off of that path is a mistake. Okay? For this reason, if you abhor the secular world and seek the Buddhist way, you should understand this standard of evaluation before anything else. Otherwise, you are destined to follow the path of the monks sure of suffering and other slanderers. As the Nirvana Sutra says, if one clings to distorted views, at the time of death one will surely fall into the Avicii hell. And what do we know about the time of death? It happens in each and every moment. There are cells dying in you right now, being replaced by new ones from your bone marrow. It's an intricate thing, and you can dive into that if you like. And that will also apply to your Buddhist understanding of the Buddhist method. This is why, again, I will say, Shakyamuni exhorted his students several times to study not only all of the Buddhist scholarship, but also non-Buddhist scholarship. Like maybe you're a physics major. Anything you dive deeply into that is full of real facts. I'm not talking about Stephen King novels and stuff. I'm talking about teaching yourself actual teaching, scholarship. Any of it will lead you to insights that will broaden your mind and deepen your understanding of yourself and life itself, right? So it all feeds into this goal of the Buddhist method, to understand deeply and give you clarity, right? Question. And now we go into Nichiren's familiar format of question and answer, because he knows right away, okay, people are going to want to ask this question, so how do I answer it? So we didn't have television back then, right, in Japan. So the way to do the Q&A and effectively propagate these teachings was to put it in writing. So question, how can we discern the error of distorted views? That's fine that you say that, but how the heck do I do that? Although I'm not wise enough, I'm nevertheless anxious about my next life and have resolved to seek the Buddhist teachings to the best of my ability. Therefore, I wish to know this standard of evaluation by all means. Should it be that I am adhering to distorted views, I will reflect on them and turn to the correct view. So teach me how to learn, right? So, answer. It can be neither discerned with our physical eyes nor perceived with our shallow wisdom. What do you think Nichiren is going to say as an answer here? This classic Nichiren. We should use the sutras as our eyes and give precedence to the wisdom of the Buddha. Surely, however, if this standard is made clear, people will become enraged and filled with resentment because they're attached to erroneous views. Let them do as they will. It's going to happen. What matters most is that we honor the Buddha's words. As a rule, people in the world value what is distant and despise what is near. But this is the conduct of the ignorant. So we'll understand what he means by distant and near here. Even the distant should be repudiated if it's wrong. In other words, long, archaic ways of doing things. This is how it's always been done. Da 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 da. Now this is starting to sound familiar, isn't it? When we fall into habits, if they're proven wrong, we should be readily open to modifying them. But it's hard to let go because we're attached to those patterns, right? While what is near should not be discarded if it accords with the truth, near being now being experience. If your experience of fire suddenly burns you, there's some new data to put into your database that fire is not always a pleasant, warming, dancing thing. Bad analogy, but you know what I mean. Even though people may revere, quote, or their predecessors' doctrines, now we're getting more specific, if those doctrines are in error, how can we employ them today? So just because you had an eminent teacher or an eminent book, a really good book that you read and had some great succinct answers for you, if upon study of later books or with other teachers, some of those things that you held dear from that great fount you first investigated are demonstrated to be false or missing the point, then you should be willing to go, oh, I need to reflect on that. I need to modify that. I need to discard that because this new information is obviously more correct. This also speaks to what the Buddha often said is that you shouldn't follow the Buddha. You shouldn't follow the words of the Buddha. What you should seek is the meaning, because the meaning will be your implementation of what the Buddha is teaching. This will make more sense as we go. And if you watch the fountain analogy, I think you'll get it better. I'm told that the scholars of the 10 schools, 3 in southern China and 7 in northern China, were so outstanding in authority and virtue that they were revered throughout the land for more than 500 years. Talk about distance. However, the great teacher Tindai, or Chiche, who lived during the reigns of emperors of Chen and Sui dynasties, examined their doctrines and denounced them as erroneous. Hearing of this, oh, and by the way, you can read up on Tindai. I have some books myself I might suggest in his history, and you'll hear this exactly, not word for word, but you'll hear in great detail how this was Chiche's or Tindai's life. Hearing of this, the people hated him intensely. They had 500 years of history for what they believed that was correct, and he was saying no, 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 no. But the Chen and Sui emperors, being worthy rulers, summoned Tendai to debate with the priests of the 10 schools and settle the matter. What an ingenious way to settle a matter. Let's get them all to debate and discuss. Not the way debates run today on TV, unfortunately, but Truth and error were thereby made clear, and in consequence, the priests all revised the distorted views that their schools had upheld over a period of 500 years and became followers of the great teacher Tendai. Wow, that's quite an admirable thing, isn't it? To be a scholar who feels correct in their views, deeply studied their predecessors, and handed down for 500 years, along comes this new monk and says, I got to correct you. For them to be able to hear Tendai's corrections in the first place is deeply admirable, and certainly the Buddha way. And for Tendai to have the compassion and the courage to correct them, that's enormous. That is the core nature of our practice as human beings, right? And in our country, the great teacher Kompan, or Dengyo, of Mount Hiei, debated with the learned scholars of Nara and Kyoto and distinguished between right and wrong in the Buddhist teachings. In every case, Tendai and Dengyo based their arguments on the sutras. And this is where Nichiren sits firmly as a scholar in the history of Buddhism. Always, always, always returns to the sutra. It's never a matter of opinion for him. There are thousands of years of scholarship on Buddhism. Why would you think that you suddenly have a new way of understanding all of Buddhism? Uh, we teach with our particular enlightenment, awakening, epiphanies, and insights. And because there's so many of us on the planet, we will undoubtedly share thoughts and words. But as I said earlier, if people who are in our sangha and we're trying to teach and they understand something in a slightly different way, um, that's their path. Unless their way is demonstrably false, where we have to correct them, like Tendai corrected these other scholars, then we must. That is also compassion, and through that back and forth, we all grow quicker, grow faster, get deeper insights. Right? How many times, another analogy, have you heard? My mouth isn't working very well. I apologize. How many times have you heard that to truly understand or learn something, one must try to teach it? Because there's no quicker way to find uh, your own weaknesses in your argument, your own weaknesses in understanding, your own little pitfalls in your understanding, than to try to teach another human being what you reasonably think you know. You will hone your skills. You will hone your own understanding. You will go back to the sutras. All the answers are there. And sometimes it means you have to reread something and it'll pop out at you, just like your math homework, right? Like math problems. Okay. So this is where the fountain analogy will really help understand all of Buddhist teaching in this manner. However, the people of our time, whether clerics or lay believers, nobles or commoners, all revere persons that do not value the law. What is the law? The law is the Dharma. The Dharma is the Buddhist teachings. It culminates with the Lotus Sutra, where it's compacted, complete into one simple form of practice, which Nichiren makes available to us by simply reciting the title. But the title isn't magic words, as I've discussed before. It is standing on the scholarship of all of Buddhist teachings. So you have to make an effort. You have a path here, but the insights you will gain will be rapid, often, and sometimes kind of rattling. They make their own mind their teacher and do not rely on the sutras. I'm going to say that again. They make their own mind their teacher and do not rely on the sutras. What does that mean? It means that once you see something like the fountain and you describe it, that's what the fountain is. And you won't hear any other information because you know that's what the fountain is. So you're not a very good student, are you? Because if that one of the 10 that saw the fountain goes into a 3-month class to learn about fountains, they're going to have a very difficult time absorbing new information about fountains in general, let alone the specific one, right? So this is what he's saying. These people are stubborn. They're stuck in their own views. They use their own mind as their teacher and extrapolate from their understanding instead of relying on the sutras to constantly check their understanding, correct it, hone it, make it correct. So, consequently, they take up provisional teachings of the Nembutsu and discard the wonderful scripture of the great vehicle, or employ the erroneous doctrines of the true word school to slander the correct teaching of the one true vehicle. There's another way of describing the Lotus Sutra is in the beginning of the sutra, Shakyamuni describes the Lotus Sutra as the way. There are not 3 ways, there are not 2 ways, there is one way. There's one vehicle, and that is the Lotus Sutra. Are they not slanderers of the great vehicle? If what is written in the sutras is true, how can they escape the sufferings of hell? And those who follow their distorted teachings will also suffer the same fate. So he's repeating the same thing over and over again in different ways, right? So here's another question. You claim that the Nembutsu and the true word schools uphold provisional or erroneous doctrines. Well, they're provisional doctrines because they're part of the sequence of teachings. The reason they're erroneous is when they're seen as the culminating end all be all of teachings. That's erroneous. Okay? So it's easy to get confused here and think that the Virmalakirti Sutra or the Wisdom Sutra are erroneous. They're not erroneous in and of themselves. They're simply steps along the way of understanding the Buddhist method. So if you stop at the Heart Sutra and think you know Buddhism, then you're practicing erroneous views. That's an erroneous view. No, it is not. It's just a number in a line of numbers. You haven't gotten to full understanding yet. So you can't claim you know Buddhism. You can claim you're studying Buddhism, but you're not there yet. Okay? And that their practitioners are people of distorted views or slanderers of the law. Again, slanderers of the law. You understand what slanders are. This seems very doubtful. The great teacher Kobo was a manifestation of Vajrasattva and a bodhisattva of the 3rd stage of development. The true word doctrine is the most profound secret teaching. Moreover, the Reverend Chantal was an incarnation of the thus come one Amida, the Lord of the Western Land, and the Honorable Honen was an incarnation of Bodhisattva great power. How can you call such honorable priests men of erroneous views? Ooh, Nichiren's taking himself to task here because he knows his followers will ask these kind of questions. Answer. Such criticism must, of course, not be leveled on the grounds of personal opinion. The matter must be clarified on the basis of the sutras. Vintage Nichiren. Look at the scholarship. Forget personal opinions and desires, because aren't opinions desires? The statement that the true word teachings represent the most profound of all secrets derives from the assertion that the Susiddhikara Sutra should be ranked as the king amongst the 3 true word sutras. Nowhere in the sutras themselves do we read that the true word teaching is the highest of the thus come one's teachings. It's not in the teaching. This is just pronounced by these leaders, these teachers. So it's opinion. In Buddhism, the teaching that is judged supreme that enables all people, whether good or evil, to become Buddhas, surely anyone can grasp so reasonable a standard. By means of this principle, we can compare the various sutras and ascertain which is superior. The Lotus Sutra reveals that even the people of the two vehicles can attain enlightenment, but the true Word Sutras do not. Rather, they categorically deny it. The Lotus Sutra teaches that women are capable of attaining Buddhahood, but the true Word Sutras make no mention of this at all. In the Lotus Sutra, it is written that the evil people can attain enlightenment, but in the true Word Sutras, there is nothing about this. How can one say the true Word Sutras are superior to the Lotus? And in just reading that, I'm reminded that, we deal with prejudice in our current day. How much less or more could it have been in times of rule by samurai? Moreover, if we consider this in the light of the omens occurring at the time of the preaching, there were 6 portents that preceded the preaching of the Lotus Sutra. Among them, flowers rained down from the heavens, the earth trembled, and the ray of light emanated from the tuft of white hair between the Buddha's eyebrows, reaching as high as the summit of being heaven, and illuminating as deep as the Avicii hell. Moreover, the tower of many treasures Buddha rose from the earth, and the Buddhas, who are emanations of Shakyamuni Buddha, assembled from the 10 directions. In addition, the bodhisattvas of the earth, led by superior practices, emerged from beneath the earth, each with a retinue equal to the numbers of sand of 60,000 Ganges River, 50,000, 40,000, 30,000, and so forth, down to the sands of 1 Ganges, 1/2, and so forth. When such awesome and wondrous events are considered, how can one still maintain that the true Word Sutras surpass the Lotus? I have no time to dwell on these matters. I have brought up only 1 drop of the ocean. So obviously, he's quoting much of the Lotus Sutra in this, and demonstrating that in the sutras themselves, they describe which is superior. So these other teachers are really going against the entirety of Buddhist teaching. Again, the admonition, study all of it, and you will understand the correct sequence of teachings. To deny something because it doesn't suit your misogyny at the time, because no, we can't have women being Buddhas. We can't allow them in our club. Well, that's not Buddhism. That's personal opinion. That's political. That's something else. That's why it becomes erroneous, right? I have here a copy of the 1-volume work called The Treatise of the Mind, Aspiring for Enlightenment, which is attributed to Bodhisattva Nagarjuna, one of my favorite bodhisattvas. This work says, quote, only in the true word teachings can one attain Buddhahood in one's present form, because these teachings expound the practice of Samhita meditation. No such exposition is to be found in the other types of teachings. As I thought this statement extremely doubtful, I examined it in the light of the sutras. I discovered that although the true word sutras contain the words attaining Buddhahood in one's present form, they gave no example of anyone who had actually done so. Even if they had, because the attainment of Buddhahood in one's present form is also taught in the Lotus Sutra, Nagarjuna should not have proclaimed that no such exposition is to be found in other types of teaching. This is a gross error. So even Nagarjuna, with his skill and his wonderful teachings, misstepped or was mistranslated at some point. It's only through reading all of it that you can get a deeper understanding of what Nagarjuna was teaching. Any of these scholars, from the beginning to Nichiren and so on, are guilty of their own humanity. But by reading enough, by learning enough, by studying, you will find your own path of truth, right? And you will get to Buddhahood. In truth, however, this treatise is not the work of Nagarjuna. I will explain this in detail on another occasion. As I alluded to, there are translations of translations of translations, and things get twisted, right? Like the fountain. Yet, even if it were a work of Bodhisattva Nagarjuna, an error is still an error. In his treatise on the great perfection of wisdom, that's my core learning tool there. Nagarjuna refers to a vital point in differentiating among the teachings expounded by Shakyamuni Buddha during his lifetime. Quote, the Wisdom Sutras are not secret teachings because they contain no mention of the attainment of Buddhahood by persons of the two vehicles. So maybe there was a specific reference. The Lotus Sutra is a secret teaching because it does. He also says, quote, those sutras that expound the attainment of Buddhahood by those of the two vehicles are secret teachings, and those that do not are exoteric teachings, end quote. If one goes by the words of mind aspiring for enlightenment, then one must not only specifically contradict Nagarjuna's great perfection of wisdom, but more generally deny the one great reason why the Buddhas make their advent in the world. Nagarjuna, Vasubandhu, and others all appeared in this world in order to propagate the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha. Nagarjuna was one of the Buddha's 24 successors. Could he really have put forth such an erroneous interpretation? Now he's talking back to a favorite quote of the True Word School that interpreted some of Nagarjuna's teachings to suit their own needs. The True Word Sutras are inferior even to the Wisdom Sutras. How can we compare them with the Lotus Sutra? Nevertheless, in his precious key to the secret treasury, Kobo claims that all of the Buddha's lifetime teachings are contained within the True Word School. He not only relegates the Lotus to third place, but even dismisses it as a doctrine of childish theory. Yet, when I reverently open the Lotus Sutra, I find that the Buddha declares it to be the foremost among, quote, foremost among all that is preached by the thus come ones, end quote, as well as the Sutra supreme, quote, among the sutras I have preached, now preached, and will preach, end quote. No other sutra says that. In the 10 Similes of the Medicine King chapter, the Lotus Sutra is likened to the ocean, the sun, and Mount Sumeru. This being the case, could anything be deeper than the ocean, brighter than the sun, or higher than Mount Sumeru? You should realize the truth through such similes. On what basis can Kobo claim that the True Word Sutras are superior to the Lotus Sutra? We find no such passages whatsoever in the Mahavajrayana or other sutras. Trusting only to his own view, he has forever violated the Buddha's intention. And with that, I'm going to stop this video. I need to mark my place here. Anyway, there's a lot in here, and it's very strong language, really. I suppose with Nichiren, that's not uncommon. He's a reformer, and he's a reformer in the way not of interpreting for his own gain, but in much like Tendai, being a redirector, a cleanup guy coming after a lot of erroneous stuff going on and trying to sort everything out to clear Japan, to clear their mind, to offer clarity toward the correct way to practice the Buddhist method, which is what we're all trying to do now, right? So with that, not too long of a video. I'll continue as soon as I can. And please enjoy this video and re-listen to it. If I misspoke or left you in a quandary on something, please make a comment and I'll clear it up as best I can. And again, follow the link to the fountain analogy. I think you'll be entertained and have another tool for understanding Buddhist scholarship. Thanks again. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Support my channel if you can. If not, you're supporting just by watching. Bye-bye.